There is one major reason why digital transformation projects fail so often, but it's not the reason you think. That's what I'm going to talk about here today. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world reach the third stage of digital transformation success. And when we're helping clients through digital transformations and helping them mitigate the risk of their transformation, oftentimes they ask, what are the main reasons why the projects fail? What are the core root causes for why projects fail? And as we go through these projects with them, we find that there's a number of things that add up over time. You have poor project management, you have customization that leads to risk, you have slow decision making, you have resistance to change, you have all these different things that could cause digital transformation failure, but it fails to identify the root cause of the main reason why the projects fail. There's a core root cause that causes all the other symptoms that people often blame for transformation failure. So what I want to do today is unpack this a bit and talk about some of the symptoms of digital transformation failure and really get to the root cause, that one root cause item that you can do differently to ensure that you're not failing in your digital transformation. Before we dive too far into today's content, I want to share a little bit of information about Third Stage Consulting and who we are. Third Stage Consulting Group is an independent, technology-agnostic provider of consulting services to help clients through their digital transformations. We help with digital strategy and software selection, as well as implementation planning. And during implementation, we provide services related to program management, organizational change, business process improvement, as well as enterprise architecture. These are just some of the services we provide. We have offices in North America as well as Europe and Asia Pacific. So if you'd like to learn more, I encourage you to check out our resource center, which includes a number of resources that will help you through your digital transformation, and you can access that for free using the QR code here or the links below. You can also reach out to me directly if you'd like to discuss your digital transformation and brainstorm ideas on how to improve where you're headed on your journey. Now let's jump back into today's content. So as I mentioned in the intro of this video, what oftentimes happens is organizations find themselves in a situation where they have a stack of problems that have added up throughout the transformation. It usually starts with falling behind schedule, running over budget. You start to have change management issues and resistance to change. You start to experience a misalignment as an organization. People aren't on the same page with the direction of the project. You start to suffer from poor project management and controls. The system integrator runs away with the project and takes control of the project without including your people in the project. Those are just a few examples of those symptoms that we often see. And if you're a total quality management type person and you've ever seen those fishbone diagrams where you do an analysis to figure out how do all the symptoms lead back to a root cause so that we can attack the root cause rather than the symptoms, that is the same for digital transformation failure. A lot of times people think there's hundreds of reasons why a project fails, but what I found over the years and what our team has found is that if you boil it down to one core issue, that one core issue is what causes all the other problems throughout a project. Now, certainly, once you address that core issue, you could still have issues with poor change management, and you could still have issues with poor project governance and controls. Those still could be problems, but more often than not, it's that root cause that amplifies those symptoms and make those symptoms appear as though they're the reason why the project is failing. So you might be asking yourself, well, what's the root cause? Well, the root cause of failure, and the one thing that causes all those other symptoms that I mentioned, is unrealistic expectations. A team goes into a project and doesn't have realistic expectations for the project, and that leads to a bunch of bad decisions later. So let's talk about in the next segment what that means, and we'll dive into that in more detail. So let's talk about unrealistic expectations in digital transformations and ERP implementations. Oftentimes what happens is when an organization has chosen their technology, they've gotten budgetary approval, the management team and the board of directors is on board with the project, momentum and excitement is an all-time high. And as a result, people are very optimistic about the project. So optimistic that they oftentimes go down the path of unrealistic expectations. They think the project is going to be a lot easier than it really is. So then what happens is you have a software vendor and the implementation technical partner that comes in and gives you an overly optimistic proposal of what the implementation will look like. And when you put these two forces together, the fact that your team is very optimistic and your outside software vendors are very optimistic, that creates a recipe for unrealistic expectations. We think the project is going to take a lot less time than it really will. We think it's going to cost less. We think the risk is less than it really is going to be. We tend to think that people will resist change a lot less than they really will. Just as a few examples, those are some things that oftentimes happen when those two forces collide. And that leads us to a project plan, a budget, a set of expectations, and a set of understood risks that are very unrealistic and don't reflect reality. So that's why unrealistic expectations are such a problem. So to take it one step further, unrealistic expectations lead to a bunch of bad decisions later. And the reason for that is because we've claimed a stake on the fact that we are going to meet these unrealistic expectations until we realize midway through the project that we were never going to achieve those expectations. So then we have to start making really bad decisions. We have to cut scope. We have to cut change management. We have to cut that extra round of user acceptance testing. We have to cut that extra round of training. So we end up making really bad decisions to try and force fit our project into a set of expectations that were completely unrealistic to begin with. So this is why unrealistic expectations are so damaging and cause failure in so many different digital transformations. So we've talked about what unrealistic expectations are and what causes them, but what can we do to have realistic expectations? Well, there's a few things I would leave you with that ensures that you'll avoid this trap of having unrealistic expectations. The first is to take vendor proposals with a grain of salt and understand that they are overly optimistic. They're salespeople that don't fully understand your business, and they are incentivized to not share too much risk or not to concern you too much about how much time, money, and effort it's going to take to be successful. The reality, though, is it is going to take you a considerable amount of time, money, and effort to be successful, and you just have to go in with those expectations and your eyes wide open. The second thing you need to recognize is that software vendors are just one piece of the equation. When you look at an overarching digital transformation, the technology work stream, the technology implementation is just one work stream. You also have change management, you have process improvement, you have the architecture and data and integration components, you have the overarching program management. All those things are things that the vendor typically does not do, but yet you need to do to make the project successful. So we need to augment what the software vendor tells us in their proposals with other activities and work streams that are going to complete the project to make it more realistic and ultimately more successful. And then the third thing I'd say is that if you can have independent and tech agnostic advisors that are not incentivized to sell you software or to sell you technical services, those providers can help provide a better view of what the project is really going to take. They can base it on experience, having helped organizations through digital transformations. And they can do it in a way that represents your best interests, not necessarily positioning the software vendor to sell more software to you. And certainly organizations like mine, Third Stage Consulting, tech agnostic consulting providers like ours can help you through that process. So if you do these three things, that's a pattern that will help you ensure that you have realistic expectations when you go into the project. You certainly don't want to lose that momentum and excitement that you have early in the project, but you also want to add a dose of reality and careful skepticism before you get too far into the project. Now, one thing I alluded to earlier in this video is the fact that part of the reason why organizations have unrealistic expectations is because the software vendors don't fully understand your business. And that's a reason why during your evaluation stage, before you get into the implementation, you want to make sure to really define who you are as an organization, what it is you want to get out of this digital transformation, and fully understand what that jump is going to be. How big of a gap is it between current state and future state? Because that difference, that delta between current state and future state is what ultimately drives the time, duration, cost, and risk of your digital transformation. So for example, if you're going from an old mainframe system to a modern cloud SaaS-based system, that is a massive jump when you compare it to an organization that maybe is already using a semi-modern ERP system and they're doing a relatively simple upgrade. Those are two very different implementation scenarios that will lead to two very different outcomes and two very different timelines and budgets and risk profiles. So you really need to understand upfront before you commit to the project what exactly you're getting yourself into and have that tech agnostic and independent view of what it's going to take to get there successfully. And this is especially true if you're treating your digital transformation as a business transformation, not just a technology project. So these are just some of the things to be aware of to understand why companies fall into this trap of unrealistic expectations. If you can solve that one problem, and if there's only one problem you really attack in your digital transformation, I would start with making sure you have realistic expectations, because it won't solve all your problems, but it'll ensure that downstream throughout the project, you're at least on a better track to be more positioned for success. Now, if you'd like to learn more about what it takes to be successful in your digital transformation, I highly encourage you to read our book called Lessons from 1,000 Digital Transformations. In this book, we talk about unrealistic expectations, but we also talk about other success factors. In fact, 19 other success factors from 20 overall that give you some tips on how to be successful. You can download that for free by scanning the QR code right here, or you can go to the links below. So I hope you found this information useful, and hope you have a great day.